Hello, everyone, and welcome to Just DAO It, the podcast for people starting DAOs. I'm Adam Miller, and I'm your host. I am the co-founder of MyDAO, which provides legal entity solutions for DAOs based out of and Web3 projects in general, based out of the Marshall Islands. And I love DAOs, and my mission in life is to help bring DAOs to the world. So one way I try to do that is through the Just DAO It podcast, where we spend about half the episode talking about recent DAO news, and the second half of the episode going into a deeper interview with our guests. Speaking of whom, let's do some quick intros. So Sam, let's go to you first. Would you please tell me and the audience a little bit about yourself and what makes you an authority on DAOs?
Not an authority, but
everybody says that.
Yeah, so I've been just in the crypto space since like 2017, 18. And always just working on DAO stuff. So early on, Moloch DAO, Meta Cartel member, DAOHaus founder, Raid Guild founder. So I've been working in DAOs and on DAO tooling for like my entire crypto life. Yeah.
All right. Most DAO people say they're not an authority on DAOs, but I think if you've been building DAO tooling for years, it's the closest thing we have. So anyways, great to have you here, Sam. Travis / Earth to Travis, would you also please give a brief intro and what makes you an authority on DAOs?
Earth to Travis, E2T, you can call me whatever you want, even Sally. So yeah, I've been a core contributor to DAOHaus since about 2021. Had got rugged as a founder of an NFT project shortly before that. And I was like, this blockchain tech, there's something more to it. And so just found, the coordination was really what mattered to me. And then it was about the people that use the tools. And so just kind of went all in on DAOHaus at that point in time. Sam and I co-founded a crowdfunding platform called Yeeter, and now we're working on Farcastles together. But what makes me an authority is I DAO it. I DAO the damn thing. Like I'm always using on-chain tools and on-chain technology in order to like demonstrate the practices that I want others to eventually adopt. So just practicing what we preach and eating our own dog food. We're experimenting with these tools all the time and nobody really cares, and that's fine. We're kind of setting the standard and figuring out what's possible.
Yep, that's awesome. And
talk about it, DAO about it.
Yeah. DAOHaus was one of the first DAO platforms that I experimented with over 3 years ago, although it was V1, but now you're in V2 or V2, V3. Of the underlying technology, Moloch 3. Thanks. But even my first DAO related business was called DAO Platform, was a DAO consulting company. And I basically put screenshots of DAO. And I remember asking in the Discord, I put screenshots of DAOHaus on my homepage and said, I can help you set up a DAO. Here's an example. And then even just yesterday, I'm part of a class about DAOs. My whole company is going through together, and we launched a DAO on DAOHaus. So really cool to have a couple of the DAOHaus folks here on Just DAO It.
Cool. Good to hear DAO's still launching on DAOHaus. We're still there.
It's still there. Yep. All right, let's turn to the Just DAO It news report, where I will summarize recent DAO news for our guests and the audience. And then I will ask you guys if you have any hot takes, agree, disagree, reactions, context to add, etc. And we can get into some discussions here. But again, we'll go even deeper about your guys' backgrounds and what you're working on in the second half of the show. I'm actually going to take us for a quick detour to start the Just DAO It news report because there's something that I've been following for the last couple of months, which is the data on DAOs from places like DAObase.ai, DeepDAO, which folks may be familiar with. But if you look at a chart on these websites, two charts I like to look at. One is how many new DAOs were started, and it counts Snapshot, it counts DAOHaus, counts a bunch of other places. And two is how much activity there is in DAOs, how many proposals there are that are either sending money or making some other decisions. And these two charts have fallen off a cliff recently. don't know if you guys have seen this too, but according to these data sources, the number of new DAOs and the amount of activity DAOs, I mean, was growing like ever before in the first half of this year, and it's fallen off a cliff. And folks can see this if they go to DAObase.ai. I'm not going to show it on the screen because I haven't set that up on my computer. But just curious what reactions you guys have to this. I mean, obviously I have some of my own, and I remain an optimist at the end of the day. I could share more about why, but how do you guys react to that? Is the data wrong? What does it tell us? I mean, I bring this up partly because of your comment about it's nice to know that someone's still launching DAOs on DAOHaus. I don't know if that was facetious or serious, but what is happening in the DAO space? Is this data real?
I think a lot of people are calling themselves DAOs and not really doing things on chain, and therefore a lot of the activity that we see isn't, you know, tracked with transactions. And so not familiar with those specific sources, but that would be, you know, what I would lean into with that is like, are they actually, you know, using smart contracts to manage their operations? And we're somewhat of DAO purists, and so not many people are taking it to the extreme that we are able to do with the Moloch V3 contracts. But, you know, even an organization that's doing a vote on Snapshot, that activity might not be tracked with those resources.
Yeah, I mean, like just qualitatively, it does feel like there's less DAO traction, less talking about DAOs. It's always like the last thing that people talk about with crypto. And so, I mean, it doesn't really surprise me. But yeah, again, like it's hard for like somebody like Travis and I to respond because it's all we do is like constantly every day making DAO transactions and stuff. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know where that is.
You know, pretty heavily in like the AI agent mix right now, and like that's all they talk about is DAOs. Like I don't know like how real it is, but they're calling themselves DAOs. They're saying that these agents are running their own DAOs and all of this kind of stuff. So you know, if we can get them using on-chain technology, then it seems to me like it's going to be a rocket ship for this next cycle.
Yeah. For sure. And look, I think a lot of it is just a bit of a trough in interest. I see two reasons, right? One is DAOs have kind of gone through these, like, I think of it as like a few phases of evolution. The first version of DAOs, like the original DAO, if you wanted to launch a DAO, you had to write your own code, right? There was no DAO platforms or tools. I think the second iteration of DAOs came from, I guess you guys probably had V2 by then, but a lot of DAO platforms had launched, and now anybody could go and launch a DAO themselves. But this was the first iteration. This was the first attempt at building software to run DAOs. And and also people were new to DAOs. And so a lot of DAOs failed. By the way, a lot of companies fail, a lot of startups fail, and everyone knows that. And no one says, oh, we shouldn't start companies anymore. A lot of DAOs failed, both because the products they were building failed and because the structures didn't work. Maybe pure direct democracy on every single decision is not the right way to run a DAO, right? Which a lot of people tried. Maybe there's other issues with the way people ran DAOs, issues with the technology. So a lot of people got burned. They had a bad experience. Well, now recently, whether it's DAOHaus earlier this year, Aragon, Decent DAO, a lot of platforms have launched new versions or new DAO tooling that takes things to the next level. Hats, another good example, right? Things that allow you to put a lot more structure around DAOs, introduce a lot of new customization or capabilities. So now I think there's a third wave of DAOs that's about to start, right? That has new tooling, has a lot of experience with DAOs that we didn't have last time. So I think DAOs are going to recover and be much more successful this time around.
Yeah, I think we'll probably
let's hope so, but you know, go ahead, Sam.
We'll probably get into this more in the second part of the conversation, but yeah, like, and with all of those the new tooling, it's really complex too. So people are still like just trying to get up to speed with this stuff, and we need these like DAO consultants that can put all these Legos together and make these organizations work and stuff. So it's, yeah, there's learning curves.
I think that's some of the problems is we focus on the tools. You know, we want to be this type of organization, therefore we need to use these tools instead of, you know, actually figuring out the process and the vision and the purpose of the organization and using the tools to support that. You can't lead with the tech. like Sam talked about, this shit is really complicated and can be overwhelming and frustrating. And when you're using so many different tools, you're going to have burnout. So there's a lot of factors that have kind of contributed to those cycles that you mentioned. So hopefully, like Sam and Alice has talked about, we'll get into what we're thinking kind of for this next generation.
Yeah. Awesome. And don't hold back. If it's relevant to the discussion now, feel free to dive into stuff you guys are working on.
Earlier this year, we launched a little project. We didn't really like publicize it a ton, but it's called Speedball, and it was a meme coin launcher on Base that was basically like a pumped up fun kind of like type interface, but it had a DAO. It had DAOs in the background, so it's like basically a pre-sale. You launch it, contributors can buy the token early, and if it hits a certain threshold, it launches an LP. Just sort of like a pumped up fun thing, but maybe like these sorts of trick DAOs that down the background, people don't know it's a DAO. They think it's like some sort of like meme coin or popular, like, catch that crypto meta and slide the DAO in behind it will help our stats. I don't know.
It's a good point. And I'd be surprised if tools like that are already being tracked by the data providers that I mentioned earlier. So there may be a lot of activity that's not being tracked in that data. I think too, like I've always thought there's kind of two extremes of how you could build a DAO tool. And of course you could go in the middle too. But one extreme is build for a very specific use case, like a particular type of DAO, a type of governance structure, a type of operations. And that makes it easier to build for. And then people can say, oh, that would be a good way for me to run my DAO. Let me go use that. The opposite end is build a tool that will work for any structure of organization, any possibility. And I feel like that's maybe more like what Hats is doing, for example, with so much configurability, so many options, and a lot of other DAO platforms too, probably. And I think you maybe have to go to either extreme to be successful. Because if you're in the middle, people will say, oh, but I wanted more customization. I wanted more configurability and I don't have it. But if you're on either end, you're fine with just being very specific or being extremely general. So I don't know if you guys like that model or if you would disagree with it, but it plays into like what you mentioned, like Speedball or these other things.
I mean, it's really hard to design a tool when the kind of spectrum of what a DAO is not well defined, and each and every organization is going to be different. And so kind of creating that one size fits all is a panacea I don't believe that we've seen. It's something that we really took into account with DAOHaus V3 and building out the tooling for interacting with blockchains and kind of just laid the foundation in hopes that other organizations would customize it based on their use cases. We didn't see that yet. I still think it might be ahead of its time, but I think that's the approach is using these like foundational tools to combine them in a way to support your organization's operations. And how the Gitcoin DAO operates and how Post Your Ale DAO operates is completely different. And so, what does that DAO need to accomplish? What needs to be on chain? What are their policies? What are their procedures? And then how can these tools support that?
Awesome. All right. I'm going to take us into the first news story of the week, aside from the detour I took us on. This one is, and actually it's the stories from the last month because I haven't done an episode in about a month. This story is from the DAO Times. The headline is, California court rules DAO members can face legal liability as business partners. A federal court in California has ruled that members of Lido DAO, a cryptocurrency governance organization, can be held legally liable as general partners, marking a significant shift in how DAOs may be treated under state law. Now, this one is very related to the business I'm in, so I'll give the first take and see if you guys want to weigh in. to me, the thing I would disagree with is that this is a significant shift. It's not the first time that a court, even in California, has said that DAOs are general partnerships, which means all the individuals can be held liable for the activities of the DAO. This is what lawyers in Web3 have been saying the whole time. I don't know if I've ever found a lawyer who said this is not how things would go. And it's exactly the reason that folks like myself, folks at A16Z, Gabe Shapiro, are working on legal entity solutions for DAOs so that DAOs can have limited liability and protect their members from unlimited liability, just like every other organization does. So I'm curious if I know I think Travis, you said you're a DAO purist, and I know some purists would say we don't want to fit DAOs into the traditional legal structures that have always existed. And I'm curious if you would agree with that, or if you guys have a take on this story in general.
Yeah, not a lawyer, but I'm also here not to deal with legal shit, right? I don't believe that's the future that I want to see DAOs. Now, we talked about the spectrum and how all organizations are different, right? Like a huge foundation that's managing billions of dollars in tokens needs to be set up in a different way than me and Sam posting pictures of the beer we drink, right? And so I think, again, we can't just like say one size fits all solution and then all DAOs need to become legal entities. We need to be able to choose why that legal entity is necessary. But I believe in a world where those legal entities are not necessary and these things are autonomous and they're not regulated by specific nation states because they are contributors outside, from all over the globe.
Sam, you want to weigh in on this one as well?
You're the lawyer, Adam. But I'm
not. By the way, I'm not a lawyer. So just so you guys know, I'm a tech entrepreneur who's ended up founding a legal services company, and so we like to remind everyone also that I'm not a lawyer and it's not legal advice. But anyways, please continue.
I'll echo Travis's. Like where I'm playing right now is in this space of less of these large DAOs that live for a long time and need. And probably do need these legal structures right now, but sort of small little raids that can spin up and raise some funds and do some things and then dissolve. And so I don't know. Do they need that? It's probably some do, probably some don't. But right now that's just not where my head is. But and the future I'd like to see is like maybe less of that or maybe really easy options to add that, like you're working on, Adam. But I don't know, it's enough.
And I think one of the problems with why so many DAOs have failed is we're trying to emulate these existing startups, these existing corporations, and we're trying to like take what they're doing and add this blockchain technology to it. And like what they have been doing has been working. By whatever criteria that you want to measure it, a startup can come up with a tech, can go get VC funding, can take over the world or miserably. Existing corporations can maximize shareholder profits, and they do that. And there are certain concerns with both of those ways of operating, and both of those models have problems, but they are set up to do what they do extremely well. And so blockchain technology is not going to solve that for them. We figure out what we do well and do that differently and do that in a way that encourages others to want to emulate that. We don't want to be emulating the broken systems that we're trying to replace. We want to find new systems and figure that out. And them will require legal entities for various reasons, and some of them can just YOLO. And one of the beauties of it is being able to spin up these organizations without that traditional baggage. And so again, it all blends perfectly.
Yeah, I think one thing you're touching on that I really like is that the technology we're building and the capabilities we're building in the DAO industry can be used by what I like to call, again, another spectrum, evolutionary DAOs and revolutionary DAOs. And to me, the evolutionary ones, those are the people who say, look, we're just trying to build a successful business. We want to protect ourselves in the current legal system. We want to be more decentralized than anything that came before, more autonomous than anything that came before, even if it's a little lacking because we're still operating in current legal frameworks. And that's probably most DAOs. But then there's the revolutionary DAOs, which are saying, hey, we're trying to build a system that literally lets you avoid government interference. Like the way Bitcoin is censorship resistant money, DAOs can be censorship resistant organizations that you cannot stop. I like the Canadian trucker example, right? When a couple years ago, the Canadian government took away or froze the bank accounts of these truckers who were protesting. And so they couldn't even buy food. And so I think if at the time DAOs were ready, I think it would have been a great use case to start like the Canadian Trucker DAO, where people could support that group and that organization could take concerted action in support of those people, whether it's buying food, taking political action. And in that case, you probably do not want a legal entity. You do not want to be, the whole point is to subvert the unfair, unethical legal system that's applying pressure to them in Canada. So anyways, I think what's awesome is that DAOHaus or any other DAO tool could be used both for both of those ends of the spectrum and anywhere in between. And probably will be funded mostly by the evolutionary side, but benefit both sides, which I think probably most governments don't realize, frankly, but we'll eventually see. All right. Turning to the next story of the week. So for this story, actually a tweet and a story about DeSci projects. So first I just want to read a story again from the DAO Times. The headline is, Bioprotocol DAOs get backing from Binance Labs. Binance Labs made its first investment in DeSci, decentralized science, through Bioprotocol, a platform that manages a network of healthcare-focused DAOs, which includes Vita DAO, my words now, but which received an investment from Pfizer in 2023. So a lot of excitement in this DeSci, decentralized science space, DAOs receiving funding even from big TradFi type medical companies. And clearly having some amount of traction. And now I'm going to read a tweet from Tarun Chitra, who is really going at DeSci DAOs and saying that maybe they're scams. So I'm going to read the tweet. It's hard to disagree with the philosophical premises of why one would want a better scientific system. Yet a system that does not build resistance to adversarial actions like what DeSci is today, ignores a basic tenet of crypto, verify, don't trust. DeSci trusts far too many intermediaries today to ever be considered permissionless. This lack of mechanism design enables scams that have feel-good stories rather than improvements to the scientific process and falsifiability. And until that happens, we cannot excuse the scams enabled by the label DeSci to fund experiments so easily exploited by the data providers. So now this tweet gets into some very specific nuanced concepts that are even beyond, my knowledge and experience in the scientific world. But I think it touches on something that comes up a lot in the DAO world. And even I think maybe Travis, you guys have alluded to as kind of purists, and are things really DAOs, or are they just using the label DAO? But similar in DeSci, I think that's what Tarun is getting at here, is just questioning, are these really DAOs? Are they really decentralized? Is the science really any different from science that was done before? And maybe I'll pause and just see if either of you would like to weigh in on this before I do.
Yeah, it's certainly over my head and above my pay grade. There's scams in all of this. But there's also scams in the existing systems that they're trying to replace. There's also, all of this invisibility of intermediaries. And so identifying what those problems are and attacking those problems, I think, is the approach that we need to take. Demonstrating that the experiments, that the solutions are working better for the existing systems and why, and not just say, because we put a label on this, it's okay, and we get special permissions because this is a decentralized autonomous organization. There's no accountability or trust built into that. That's what we're trying to add. And so anybody that's not doing that is sus as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and the next story of the week is related, so I'll just go right into it. This is a Twitter post from Miles Jennings from Andreessen Horowitz. He's their legal counsel, and the tweet goes as follows: "With the fight for crypto's existence subsiding, it's time to focus on crypto's purpose: decentralization. Decentralization is at the heart of what makes crypto worthwhile. But if we don't properly incentivize and enshrine it in law, we'll lose it." And then he says, read my op-ed at CoinDesk, which you can find as well. And the subline of the CoinDesk article is, "Digital asset laws should enshrine decentralization standards, helping to guard against volatility, scams, and casino culture," says A16Z's Miles Jennings. I think there's an interesting maybe contradiction that a lot of folks would want to call out here, which is, on one hand, Miles and A16Z are fighting for decentralization, which is generally achieved through technology. But on the other hand, or maybe relatedly, clearly relatedly, maybe in support of the same end, is saying to do that, we have to write laws that make it possible. And I don't actually disagree. Again, I think it goes to the evolutionary versus revolutionary standpoint. If we want the evolutionary folks, venture capitalists, TradFi, trad medicine, whatever else, to be able to participate in this evolution, we need to have laws that allow for this evolution, and maybe even standards that say, here's what decentralization looks like. And if you follow that standard, you don't have to follow securities laws, for example, right? You don't have to register with the SEC as long as you meet these decentralization standards. That'd be enormously beneficial for us. I could also see an argument that says, well, look, it's really technology that's enabling this decentralization. Maybe we should just subvert government and prevent them from even being able to stop us from doing things in the decentralized way we want them to do, or prevent them from being able to come at us with securities laws. So maybe a little bit of a contradiction there, but I think what I can certainly agree with is that, like Miles says, that decentralization is part of the point of crypto, right? If you're launching a token or a smart contract that's controlled by one party, one person, or one company, that you're not taking full advantage of what's possible with blockchains, which is to have smart contracts and dApps and protocols that cannot be changed by one person or one party and are rather governed in a much more decentralized way. What do you guys think about this one?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with the last bit he said. Like, that should be our goal, and that's kind of like what we're driving towards. I have a hard time with the in-between stuff. I'll let other people try to figure that out,
Yeah, it is the goal, and it is one of the most important principles that I believe in. But I question how we're going to create standards for that. And Sam and I are in organizations that it's just the two of us, and we're in a DAO, and we vote on the blockchain, and we make decisions as two people, and I try to be completely transparent with that. It's not decentralized in any way, and so I mean it's just the two of us, but that's our mode of operating. And the same with a two-founder startup. They're going to operate differently than a Fortune 500 company. And so these blanket statements and regulation across an entire industry actually benefits and protects the incumbents. And that's, again, some of the shit that we're trying to break down, is that these big organizations get to call the shots because they can follow the rules and they can pay for the lobbyists and all that kind of stuff. So decentralization is extremely important. It is, one of my passions and one of the priorities that I see for a better future. But regulating that and creating laws that I don't even know what that might look like, but guarding against scams and volatility is a way to play in the emotions of people and say, oh, we're going to protect you. We're going to protect you with these laws. And that shit doesn't work, man.
Yeah. Anything to add, Sam? All right. The next story of the week. This is a tweet from Hasseeb, Hossseeb, and the tweet is, what do people think bringing back ICOs means mechanically? And quick side note here, this tweet, I think, is reflective of a conversation I'm hearing in a lot of places, which is, let's bring back ICOs, right? Like, what was so bad about ICOs in the first place? So let me read the rest of the tweet now. Is it no KYC, no legal contracts, direct to retail sales with no cap per account, like in 2017? Is it Echo.xyz style sales, pre-launch tokens only to accredited investors, coinless style? Is it IDOs, which I think is initial DAO offerings, if I'm not mistaken, or something else? I think this is really interesting because initially there were all these ICOs, right? If anyone listening doesn't know, initial coin offerings in 2017-ish, people were launching tokens and raising a bunch of money and basically calling it ICO, which sounds like IPO. Basically just telling the world, this is a security, right? At the time, SEC wasn't paying attention. They were about to start paying attention, but they're basically saying, this is a security, invest in my project and you'll make a lot of money. And a lot of people got into it. A lot of people made a lot of money. There were a ton of scams, a lot of fraud, some real projects, including Ethereum itself, obviously before 2017. And so I think there is something to this question. It's not as simple as just bring it back or not and do it or not, right? I mean, I think it's part of the point the poster is making is, what does this future look like? And is it somewhere in between? I think it's really important that we fight for being able to do something like ICOs. Like, to me, one of the biggest things holding crypto back today, especially in the United States, but that affects the whole world, is that the government has incentivized founders to do things that are more worthless and less valuable, in the sense that, let's say I'm about to launch a project. If I tell everybody and I commit legally, I will never reward you for participating in this project. Buy my token, but you're never getting anything in return. You're not getting a return on your investment. You're not getting a dividend. I'm not doing anything that will add value for you. That's totally allowed in the US legal system. You don't have to follow any other rules. You can just do that. And that's what meme coins are, right? There are people saying, I will do nothing. This is a joke. Buy it if you want. I'm not doing anything for you. That's totally allowed. Now, if that person said, okay, same thing, but I'm going to work really hard for you over the next few years to make this token valuable, to bring value to this project, to return money to the people who invested in me. Well, now suddenly you have to follow this like extremely draconian set of securities laws. And basically people are saying it's just not worth it. There's no reason for me to do that. And so you don't have people, you have a lot fewer people like yourselves doing valuable things and able to raise a lot of money for them. And instead you have meme coins, which are fine too. But to me, the point is, like, I guess one, we have to fight legally to allow to get rid of this perverse incentive, right? And two is maybe we do have some innovative technological solutions or approaches, even just political or legal solutions that allow people to do more of this kind of thing today, even before the rules change. But I do think it's a huge problem, right? That you can't do this kind of thing. Would love for you guys to weigh in on this.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it just always felt like one of the, like people have always said, like one of the killer apps of crypto is the some form of ICO. So I think, yeah, there's got to be some way to bring those back. And I would lean towards the technology. How can the technology help like ease that regulation? Like, with Yeeter that we built, it's like a crowdfunding platform. It's launches a token, you buy the token, and it's like the Yeeter version. It's not a transferable token, but you can turn that on. But it also allows exit at any moment because it's a DAO in the background with rage quit to Moloch DAO. And so that's like maybe a small teeny step in that direction of providing consumer protection with the technology. But maybe something like that is the direction we need to head.
LFG, let's bring them back. I mean, I love that this conversation is a big part of the meta, and hopefully it will be part of this cycle. Whether or not we got to break laws to do it, then that's fine, because it is the killer app. This is how we disrupt existing funding models. This is how we decentralize. This is how we incentivize communities to participate in things that they believe in without having to go through traditional structures. That's what allows small teams like me and Sam to get supported by our community, instead of having to go raise a seed round or try to fit into a model that we really don't belong in, because we're not building scalable startups. And the problems with ICOs was the accountability, was teams raising, saying they're going to do things and not delivering, and people invest, people get wrecked. That is an absolute risk that, when you put your tokens in those contracts, you have to take responsibility for. If you're investing in Octant meme coins and you're surprised that you get rugged by the on that same girl, then that's kind of like your problem, not mine. But like Sam was talking about, like, this is what we have tried to address with the technology. And that is one of the most powerful features of the Moloch V3 contract that we build everything on, is when you don't agree with what the team is doing, when that team is not delivering, you can rage quit. You can take your portion of that treasury back. And that puts the power in the hands of the people, and it forces the teams to be accountable and to deliver and to be transparent about what they're doing. And so we can do this with technology without regulation, and allow people to take the chances. Now, unruggability is kind of one of the things that we use to market a lot of our technology. People don't care. That's not the type of people that are involved in this cycle right now. They're here for the speculation. They don't want protections. That risk is what gets their heart beating. And so, unfortunately, that's what's going on in the space right now. I certainly hope it won't always be that way, but some type of education and protections built into the tech is how I would like to see us address that.
So like in the Octant case, let me dig into this a little bit. So if anyone doesn't know, Octant is a, instant celebrity type social media person who has launched 1 or 2 meme coins. Basically everyone throws their money in and basically gets rugged by Octant and Octant's collaborator, right? All the money goes to them, the coin goes to 0, and everyone loses their money. And, the legal system would say, well, maybe that should be illegal. And I think, by the way, it might be illegal. She may go to jail for this. But what we're saying is, well, maybe there is a technological solution, like an operational solution, so that rather than saying, like, legally, don't be evil, right? People like to use this analogy, have the technology say, can't be evil. So let me see if I understand how you would do this differently with a DAOHaus DAO, for example. So if Octant, instead of saying, buy all these tokens from me, said, I'm creating a Moloch DAO, right, which is what DAOHaus does. And all the money that is received from the token sale goes into the DAO, right, into the smart contracts. And then we're going to decide, even if I own 25% of them, we're all going to decide together what we do with the money. And if anyone wants to, at any point, doesn't like a proposal, we can, you guys can rage quit. Is that basically what you'd have in mind for how to do a Octant token in a better way?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, for sure. Like that's kind of how some of the fundraising contracts we've written work. And they live on that Moloch DAO, and we've got a couple different flavors right now, but it's all flexible. But yeah, one that speedball product I talked about earlier launches an LP, and so you've got a like fully liquid token, and fees go into the DAO. The DAO then has, everybody that owns those tokens could vote on how that stuff's used, or they can rage quit them, or they can sell them on the market. I think it starts to drive us in that direction.
Yeah.
So, you know, one thing that's missing from that.
By the way.
No, I'm not a hawk to a bag holder. Unfortunately, I should do it just for the memes, but I think it's on that we won't even mention the name chain. Yeah, so I mean some type of visibility into the token distribution up front so people could see, hey, this is kind of jacked up, right? That's 98% is going to XYZ wallets. That's kind of sus. That's a concern. So that's going to be helpful as people understand more about what they are getting themselves into. But like Sam was talking about, you know, once a treasury is raised in a Moloch DAO, all the funds that need to get pulled out of that are done through a proposal. And so to a girl can say, hey, I'm going to spend $1 million to build, you know, Spit on That Thing app. And this is the team that we have. This is the token utility that we're going to build into that. And the community can be like, LFG, we believe in this. This is going to pump our token. And I think that this is what we need to do as an organization. They're going to vote to support to pass that. Alternatively, to a girl can say, hey, I need a Lambo and it's going to be $1 million. And everybody could be like, yo, that's not why I'm in this thing. So the Moloch DAO contracts have a feature called Rage Quit. Even if that proposal passed, there's a period called grace period. And that period is what allows people to determine if they want to exit that DAO. So they say, hey, you know, I'm not here for the Lambos. Like, I'm taking my funds, I'm out. Those are the type of protections and exit rights that our technology and the tools that we believe in provide the protections with.
These tools also don't have like out of the box like allocations for the team or like hidden, you know, token allocations for VCs or anything. It's completely a fair pre-sale, like completely open. If the team wants tokens, they need to buy them too. So
cool. Do you guys have like a vesting thing built into DAOHaus where you could like set allocations for founders and have them vest over time?
You could plug that stuff in. We haven't played with much of that yet. But yeah, there's lots of space to play with those kinds of things. The Moloch DAO contracts have these things called shamans, and they're like more or less they're like admins in the DAO, but they can be contracts. And so you could build like vesting shamans in that would mint tokens or hold tokens and give the tokens out to founders or team members at certain times or when certain milestones pass. There's lots of design space available.
Yeah,
it'd be dope to see Hedgie summon a shaman.
Someone's asking in the comments if you could explain Rage Quit in a little more detail and how that fits into DAOs.
Our terminology is always a little like insider gamer a little bit, but Rage Quit, it's basically just an exit. So in a Moloch DAO, if you're a member, there's two levels of membership. There's what we call voting tokens. These are both ERC20s, and then there's share or loot tokens or non-voting tokens. And so both give you equal share of the main DAO treasury. So you have your portion based on the amount of shares you have. The voting tokens allow you then to vote on proposals and pass whatever proposal actions to do stuff with that money. But at any moment, you can rage quit a portion of your loot, your voting or non-voting tokens just out of the DAO. It burns those tokens and returns your share of whatever ERC20s or native tokens are in the DAO treasury.
Cool. So it's kind of like if you were a stockholder of
100,000. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
100,000 in the DAO, and I own 10%. And Sam passes something that I don't necessarily agree with. I'm like, screw these guys. I'm going home. If I rage quit, I can take that portion of the treasury out and liquidate it basically as whenever I deem that that's something that's desirable for me as an individual.
Yeah. I assume if the DAO has other property like NFTs or real world property, they don't get a share of that stuff, right? Just whatever liquid tokens are in the treasury.
Right. It just works off of ERC20s
Yep.
at this point. You probably could build something in for 1155s, or you could look at other like sort of options with NFTs. And we've played with things where when the DAO owns an NFT, and if somebody wants to rage quit, they request like a certain extra amount of ERC20 for their share of the NFT. But yeah, without fractionalized NFTs, like, yeah, we can't really do much there.
It's interesting. To me, that's actually maybe a good balance model, because sometimes when I'm talking to people about rage quitting, it seems too extreme. Like you're almost giving too much power to each individual member, whereas like the group itself, some people feel like should retain some right to keep the money that was invested, for example, if it was invested, and not let people take it back, because that could harm the rest of the community. So maybe it's actually a good balance that like you can rage quit your share of the treasury, but that doesn't mean you get your share of the intellectual property or the product or, other things. Maybe that's actually a good middle ground.
And those type of issues can be addressed with how the organization is set up within the specific policies of that they're trying to do. We could raise $100,000 tomorrow and pass a proposal to say we're putting 50% in this other safe to fund an LP or to fund our first project. So at that point in time, the treasury is only 50%. And so if we were to rage quit, like we're only getting 50% back because it's unspent funds. It's only the share of the treasury. But the beauty of it is if there's a proposal to do that and somebody disagrees, then they can exit before that's actually executed.
Yeah.
Other cool things to take us towards is like there are these pieces. There's, with things like Moloch DAOs and, Moloch DAO, the treasury is just it's a Gnosis safe. The membership tokens are ERC20s. With other tooling like hats and, Hedgie, like you talked about, like the DAO Legos are there. It's like we just need these DAO consultants, these like tech heavy DAO consultants, because it's complicated. They can put these things together and model things based on like what the organizations need. So it keeps coming back to that to me.
It's so interesting to me because I started out
now looking for work.
Yeah, now the paperwork. Yeah.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No worries. Yeah, the streams are a little delayed, so sorry about that. But it's interesting to me because I started out in this space as a DAO consultant, and went in this direction of founding my DAO instead. But I have been thinking recently about whether we should get back into that business, just because it does feel like a space where people need help. And I mean, even with traditional businesses, people hire consultants, but I feel like this is a little different because one, DAOs are so new. So how could you expect people to just know how to start one and run one? And two, because of the technology component, to your point, like with a traditional business, you can just say, hey, this is how we're going to operate for the next month. Like we're just going to do it. With a DAO, you got to write code or at least implement code using software tools like DAOHaus that actually structures the next month to work the way you say it's going to work. And so that does introduce some extra knowledge that you need to be able to do it.
I feel like there's the markets there too. There's a whole like industry around Salesforce consultants, and they're doing similar things. They're just like cobbling together solutions for organizations within Salesforce, which is really complicated too. It's just a little bit more in that blockchain space.
Yeah, good point.
And until we have successful use cases of other people say, hey, we want to do it that way, we don't know, can you help? The demand I don't think is quite there yet, but there is a lot of potential, because the potential is in the integrations and knowing how flexible and how composable this stuff is, to be aware of what is possible and to know that even if there's not an existing tool, we can use the existing infrastructure and technologies to build whatever our hearts desire.
Yep. Awesome. All right. Well, I love that we've already gotten into talking about some interesting DAO stuff. So I'm going to officially transition us to the second part of the interview, and we'll get to continue talking about some of this stuff, or I should say the second part of the show, which is the interview of our featured guests. First, a quick advertisement for MyDAO. My company. So we provide legal entity solutions for DAOs, specifically in the Marshall Islands. It's also a great place to launch a token or start an NFT project or do anything else in crypto. We also have a network of lawyers and corporate service providers around the world who we can introduce people to if they're looking for advice about the right jurisdiction or legal structure or tax structure. So please reach out to us at MyDAO. It's MIDAO.org if you're interested in learning more about that, or feel free to reach out to me directly. So with that out of the way, let's turn to the featured guest interview. And before we continue the discussion about what you guys are building, let's just take one step back first. I'd like to ask each of you to tell us how you got into Web3 and DAOs in the first place, and then we'll turn to what you're working on now. So who would like to go first?
I can go first. Yeah, I've been working in tech. I'm working like marketing and tech consulting for years and years and years, and a developer, and just got pilled by a buddy on blockchain technology. So for me, originally it was just this idea of a giant open database. The permissionless database was really exciting that we could build all sorts of applications on top of. So right away into Ethereum in that world, and started a consulting company with a couple of pals, Deacon Brown and Ben Gist, and we were doing all sorts of consulting work. Met Peter Pan and joined Cartel really early on, and just started building UI for the Cartel. Was the first fork of the original Moloch DAO, and so we built a UI for that, forked that for Moloch DAO as well, and just started really like getting into this Moloch DAO stuff. In Berlin 2019, we built a launcher for the Moloch V1s. And that was like the first iteration of DAOHaus. And you could like, start your Moloch V1, and then we built a multi-tenant app around that, and just kind of went from there, and then started just a ton of DAOs. So like Raid Guild was one of the first DAOs we started, and started just experimenting with our tooling inside this DAO, inside Cartel, inside several other sort of ventures. And it's just sort of spidered from there into all sorts of different stuff. Kind of how I got going. So it's always just been in that world, really excited about like future of work type stuff early on, and just down that rabbit hole.
Nice. Cool. All right, Travis, how about yourself?
Yeah, for some strange reason, like I've always gotten paid in financial services industries. Used to build internet banking software. Prior to COVID, I was working in Europe, building out the innovation program for a bank. And, global pandemic hits. I can no longer travel back and forth, kind of a, oh shit, existential crisis. And one of my homies is like, I don't know why you're not like full-time blockchain. And so it was just like, let's go. Because of my experience in financial services, I started with DeFi and just realized that this isn't it. This isn't like the culture that I want to be a part of, and it's cool. And so found Raid Guild and was introduced to a founder that was looking to build an NFT platform, the first platform for like fractionalizing NFTs on Arbitrum. And we spent, about 9 months of blood, sweat, and tears getting this thing ready for launch. And right when things got real frothy and the investor rugged and pulled all the liquidity, stopped paying the teams. And so everybody's like, haha, welcome to crypto. And I was like, all right, cool. I've done the DeFi thing. I've done the NFT thing. It's like, this is not it. There's something else. And that's what I was referring to earlier about, the principles of coordination and using these tools for bigger purposes. And that's what led me into DAOs, led me to, get to kind of who's doing this shit right, who's doing this thing based on what they believe in, and not just what they can make a buck on. And that's what brought me to DAOHaus, and that's what made me poor, but been there ever since, and they can't get rid of me.
Why does it have to make us poor to work on this stuff?
Ask stuff every day.
Yeah, I think, like, if the audience is wondering why Travis might say that, and why it might apply to people working in the space, I think DAOs have not yet achieved a level of recognition by TradFi and VCs to get the kind of funding that's required to build DAO tooling. And so we're funding it ourselves. We have leftover funding from ICOs or old VC rounds. Some of us luckily are able to get a small amount of funding, from VCs and the like in our case, by working on a legal, like my dream, right? My mission in life is to help bring DAOs to the world. I mentioned that earlier. It's not to create laws, but I found this business opportunity that we need better laws, and DAOs are willing to pay for a legal entity solution. And so I'm working on my DAO, which is great. But so some of us have found some funding, but it is still tough in the DAO industry. Not a ton of funding coming.
And we build everything open source. We believe in sharing our software with the world. We believe in using other people's tools to empower what we're trying to accomplish. And that's an important thing for us. Also, what we build isn't traditionally what VCs would invest in. They're investing in those 10x scalable startups, and it's not us. And that's cool. I'm not going to diss, because I've been a part of that startup community for a long time, and that was part of the story that I didn't mention prior to COVID as well. But nobody's going to look at us and think that what we're building is a $1 billion opportunity anytime soon. And so, that puts us in a really difficult place as far as who can fund us. And we've done community contribution offerings, but it's really hard to go back to your homies all of the time with your hand out saying, hey, we need some more tokens to keep the lights on for the next 3 months. And it's really stressful from our perspective too, because there's never a level of comfort that it's cool, there's food on the table, let's build. It's always chasing around, trying to figure out cool new technologies, but also, oh shit, how are we actually gonna, balance the books at the end of the month?
We're sort of in this public goods adjacent space too, where we're pretty adamant about you should never have to pay to use DAOHaus software. Fork it, launch DAOs, it's free, whatever, and so it's harder to find those revenue streams. And so, that's another full-time role in our space is how do I get, funding? How do I find public goods funding? How do I apply for all the grants? It takes forever. Maybe agents will help us. I don't know.
Yeah, hopefully. So maybe you could talk a little more about, let's talk about what you guys are working on. So my first question, I'll ask them two at once, is how's all this stuff related? So we've talked about DAOHaus, Moloch, we've talked about other tools you guys have worked on. Sam, you have Farcastle in your name here on the video live stream. What are all the things you're working on and how are they connected? And then let's find one or two to dig into in more detail.
Real quick, just from a technical standpoint, the Moloch DAO is the baseline for everything. So we're just able to use that and other tooling we plug in as sort of the data blockchain layer, and then we build all sorts of different applications on top of that.
Okay, so Moloch is this open source smart contract platform for DAOs and maybe other adjacent Web3 things. Okay, yeah. So what's all the stuff you guys are building on top of it or have built on top of it?
Yeah, so like Em said, it all does kind of make sense from a stack. We're still continuing to like experiment on the tools that we've been working on since 2019 in the case of Sam. And also shout out to Amin, who was the original kind of like mastermind behind the Moloch contracts. But we launched DAOHaus V3 about 2 years ago now at ETH Denver. That was what we were hoping, the foundation that other people would use these tools to kind of build on top of our technology, to customize it based on their specific use cases. Right at the time that the bottom just like fell out of crypto, and that didn't happen. And we stayed building. Like, we've stayed in the trenches. We haven't gone anywhere. We kept, experimenting with new ideas and building new tools and new technologies. And the Yeeter crowdfunding tool is one of those. Speedball tool is what we did this past summer and won the Coinbase hackathon in the trading category. So we're just still like figuring out, how these tools are going to be relevant, and using them and dog fooding them and actually practicing what we preach, so we understand kind of some of the problems, we understand some of the limitations, and a big part of it is taking people away from what they're actually trying to achieve, taking them outside of their conversation to go to another app, to make a decision, to vote on something. And so got really excited with the promise of decentralized social media, and the team at Merkle Manufactory and what they've been doing with the Farcaster protocol and Warpcast client was really exciting, and got super down frames about a year ago, and like, okay, cool, like now we can start building these like interactions within a social feed. So that's kind of where some of the ideas for Farcastle came, is like, how can we take the features and functionalities that we know have potential for human coordination and put them in a social feed where people can, vibe about beer or build the next protocol or whatever they're doing, but then to be able to make decisions about what's important to the organization, what policies they want to implement, how they want to spend their money, that they can actually do that right there from the feed without having to go to a bunch of different complicated apps.
Okay. So what are you guys building for Farcaster and Web3 Social?
So we have our roadmap in 6 levels, and we have delivered levels 1 and 2. And that essentially kind of to make some of the connections to our contracts, to be able to display that DAO data within Frame, and add the ability for people to make to vote on proposals, to execute proposals directly from the Farcaster Warpcast feed. That's what we have so far. The next 2 stages are to be able to actually create those proposals from an app, so you're no longer having to go to the DAOHaus admin app when you've got an idea or need to make a transaction. You can actually do that from V2 Frame. And then level 4 is kind of committed to bringing some of the Yeeter crowdfunding features into the social feed. So, going to where the conversation is, taking advantage of some of the notifications and some of the features that Warpcast has built, so we don't have to do it all. We do what we specialize in, and hopefully make it fun, hopefully make it engaging, so it's not this scare governance, right? It's like, what do we do as an organization? How can we find our purpose and just let it be more about the why than the tech.
You mentioned Yeeter as part of what you were describing. What, for the audience and me, what is Yeeter?
Yeeter is our crowdfunding tool. It allows you to say, hey, I've got an idea, or we have an idea, we want to raise funds, and sort of like crypto Kickstarter. So it builds on top of the Moloch contract. So it has all the protections that we mentioned earlier with Rage Quit, but it allows ICOs. Basically, you can offer a coin, and the people that are in your community can decide that, you know, we want to support because we believe in this product that you're building or this purpose. And it can be, you know, extremely flexible, right? I want to go put jackets on the homeless people in downtown Austin. I need to raise, you know, $1,000 to do that. And so putting that out into the social feed, getting the support that we need to execute that, and the people that contribute that have, you know, shares in the DAO that spun up for that crowdfund.
Yeah, so you can check that out at yeet.haus, HAUS. But yeah, I think one of the exciting things about Farcastle is it's taken a lot of these pieces and kind of more using the Farcaster or Warpcast UI as the UI for this. So it's, you know, right in your feed. You can form your little communities in your channel. You can launch your DAO, your crowdfund. You can create proposals and vote on them all right there. If you follow MetaDreamer from, I don't know if you're familiar with MetaFactory, his thinking has really helped drive a lot of this, and he's sort of working on MetaFactory V2, and it's going to use a lot of this technology, and it's going to almost be this separate little interface, but it'll be kind of in Warpcast as well. And you know, like it's just allowing these small little ephemeral DAOs to spin up. The community spins up. They're calling them raids right now, and it raises. It'll like then allow you to form a team to, you know, design a shirt or whatever you would for MetaFactory. It'll have this like revenue return after the t-shirt sells and stuff, and then everybody just good game rage quits out of the DAO and gets their split of revenue, and it's done. And then you can repeat it and do another one and do another one. So I think that's kind of where we're really excited, is these small little ephemeral type DAOs that can spin up, do a thing, prove something, and then live also within these communication channels and spaces where people are just already at. They can watch it all happen. So,
and to turn those communication channels into DAOs themselves, that, you know, are organizations that manage, you know, what's happening in that channel, whether it's, you know, voting for adding someone as a moderator, or deciding we need to raise funds or to do an event or to build something, but empowering, you know, these cozy corners on Warpcast to, you know, be able to raise funds, to be able to make decisions.
Group chats with bank accounts.
Yeah, like we've always said.
Taking it back.
It's like actually a good idea. Like, I mean, and it's like group chats with bank accounts and governance of the group chat, right? Like if Facebook groups were not controlled by one person, but instead governed collectively and had a bank account, that would actually be much more useful and cool potentially than Facebook groups are. So it sounds simple,
Facebook
but
groups, you know, all the drama that we've seen with subreddits, you know, we're not there yet, but that's, you know, it's scope eventually.
So let's talk a little bit more about channels on Farcaster. And I want to just first level set a bit for the audience. So if anyone doesn't know, Farcaster is the leading Web3 social network. A few years old. It's like a Twitter clone, you could say, with some differences on the blockchain and on a decentralized network. Not everything's decentralized yet, but that's a whole other story, but largely decentralized. And the main client is called Warpcast. There are others, but Warpcast built by the same people who originally built Farcaster. And in Farcaster, there are channels, which initially I imagine to be kind of like hashtags. And in some ways they are, but the team actually that built it imagined them to be more like Reddit sub communities. So a little more of a community than just a hashtag. I am a host or co-host of many channels, and most of which are not very active, but one which is the DAOs channel. Travis, at least, also, unless Sam has a pseudonym, maybe less so, but Travis is very involved in as well. And we always talk about what's the next step for us, and at what point do we become a DAO ourselves as the DAOs channel? At which point do we decentralize governance, raise money for some purpose, maybe use the money to help promote and drive more value to the channel and the people who follow it? So far, we've been very, I'd say, time and resource constrained. Like a lot of communities, there's not necessarily anyone who wants to spend all their time developing the future of the community, but we're always curious what tools are out there that might help us take things to the next level. And so I'm really curious to hear from the two of you. I mean, what is your vision for channels like ours? Is it a one-click, now you're a DAO? Is it a bunch of features you can choose from? How does it all fit together? I mean, maybe even more importantly, just what is your vision for channels, in conjunction with what you guys are building?
Vision for channels is pretty broad, because each is going to be different, right? I think the one that we're the most excited about is Post Your Ale, and that's a place where you can take a picture of the beer that you're drinking and share that with your homies. Now we're using that as kind of the marketing arm for one of our projects, which is called Brood, which is a decentralized brewery. Basically, we brew beers for conferences or for protocols or whatever. We have a team that comes together to create the label, put together the formula, get the beer brewed up and canned and all that kind of stuff. And that is supported by what we call the proof of drink protocol. And for every beer that you drink, it has an NFT embedded in the label. And, that's kind of what we're messing with there. That's going to be much different than, say, the Octant channel. The Octant is, extremely well-funded DAO. So one's vision and the other's vision is going to be kind of hard to align. But I think what you said that had me thinking is, like, when do we become a DAO? I think it's when you need to add governance is the easy answer. And that governance could just be selecting moderators or just, who gets to implement the policies for the channel. But even more so important, when you need to raise funds. And, if we want to put together a treasury to support whatever that mission is, that to me is a good indicator that it's probably time to add some of these DAO tools. At this point, it's not one click, we have a DAO. Because we're building on all of the Moloch DAO contracts, all of the tools that we previously built are able to contribute into the flow of what's possible. So you can go now and summon a DAO on DAOHaus admin V3. It will take about 5 minutes, and we've added features into the DAOHaus admin that now you can cast your DAO to Warpcast. You can cast your proposal to Warpcast. So it's not, as simple as one click, but it's not really difficult to add this functionality to Warpcast right now.
Yeah, I guess, Adam, I'd ask, as a channel owner, as a channel participant, do you see like opportunities? Is there anything you'd like to be able to do in the DAO space to kind of turn your channel into that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, so I'll give you a couple thoughts. I mean, one is, first of all, I think one of the cool things about DAOs versus traditional organizations is that you don't need to know everything you're going to do when you're starting out the way you do with traditional organizations. That doesn't mean it's a free pass to not plan anything, but the reason I say that is, let's say a board of directors of a nonprofit comes to me, a charity, whatever, that's supposed to benefit my community, and it's 5 people, and they say, I want you to give us some money. Well, I need to know what they're going to do with the money because they decide what happens with the money going forward. And so unless they have the whole thing planned out now, there's no way I'm giving them money. If instead someone came to me and said, hey, like I airdropped everyone on the island I live on, for example, a governance token, or not, let's not even say that. Let's say they're selling governance tokens. So instead of donating to a charity, I'm buying governance rights in my island's new DAO that will be used in a way that I get to vote on. Well, now I say, okay, you know what? We don't know what we're going to do yet to make the island better. Let's see how much money we can raise. Let's see what the engagement is like. Let's see what ideas other people have. Sure, that sounds good. I'll give the money. And I think our DAOs channel is in a similar state where we don't have anyone who has said, I have a lot of time to devote to creating a really well-documented plan and executing on everything. And I'm going to get everyone to give us money, right? We're not in that position. But from conversations we've had in the past, we actually are in a position where I think a lot of people would be willing to throw in some money, buy some governance tokens, or contribute to a treasury that we collectively control. And then depending on how much money and activity there is, we can see what do we have a budget to do, right? Because that could be very different. If it's $100, $1,000, or $10,000, or $100,000, well, suddenly now we can hire a developer if we want to, or a marketing firm, or just pay for ads somewhere, or web developer, right? So I think that's kind of where we're at, is like, could we test and collect how much interest there is in this community before even knowing what we would do with it? I think that could be very interesting.
I like that. I like that a lot too.
Yeah.
No, I like that a lot. And I think that even precedes the need for a DAO once we decide to make treasury, once we decide to raise a treasury. The beauty of some of the blockchain technology is we can track decisions. So we've decided to raise a DAO. We decided to summon a DAO. Now, what is the next decision that we're going to make? We want to decide to do marketing on Twitter or something along that. Does everybody within that organization agree that that's what we're going to do? There becomes this record of the decisions. We decided to have a logo contest. Does everybody who believes that who wins this logo contest, that becomes the organization's logo? Yes or no, right? And so we need to deploy our new technology to Cloudflare. We're going to use Cloudflare as a vendor. It is going to cost $20 a month. Do we want to decide as an organization that that's what we want to do? And so it has this like historical record of all of these decisions that were made, even before, hey, we want to do a crowdfund. Is that cool? Not to say that those things are set in stone, but then you can refer back to it. It said, okay, at this point in time, we decided that we wanted to do a contest for a logo. The logo doesn't always have to be the logo, but it says, hey, we need to do a new logo for these reasons and need to hire a designer and pay them. Does the organization agree to that? So that to me is some of the coolest stuff about DAO technology is that historical record of decisions.
Yeah, I love that. And this type of thing does sound like it could be really useful for us. By the way, Sam, can you clarify what is Farcastle specifically? How did that fit into all the things Travis was saying, or what does it do?
Yeah, Farcastle is kind of what he was saying. It's like it's that mashup of the Warpcast frames and stuff that we're able to build with the DAO tooling inside of there. So it's kind of a mix of stuff right now, but the idea of Farcastle is like, yeah, let's try to turn channels into DAOs. And so, yeah, we're kind of weaving a lot of that technology and trying to make it easy for that to happen.
And where can people find the ale channel you mentioned if people want to share their beers with each other?
/post your ale. Is it YR or YER? I forget.
YER.
YER. Right. So we've also been playing with a lot of token gating of channels. So there's a few different solutions out there we mess with, and that one has some token gating on an ERC 1155 called Proof of Drink. So Brood.beer, they're a brewer, or this decentralized brewery spun out of Raid Guild, and the beers have these QR codes, and those like point to a place where you can claim a proof of drink token if you've drank the beer, right? If you have that token, you can get membership into that DAO, into that channel too.
Interesting.
We're kind of like playing with these games like this, but Post Your Ale is a little more loose. If anybody likes beer, go there.
Got it. So we only have about 10 minutes left, and I have a million questions I would love to ask you guys, but maybe I'll just try to keep it pretty open-ended. You know, the people who, and then we'll conclude with sharing contact info and stuff like that. But, you know, the people who listen to this show, we've always said it's the podcast for people starting DAOs. So it's people who are new to the DAO space and new to Web3. It's also people who have been in Web3 for a while and maybe are getting into DAOs now. I wonder, I guess I can imagine two things they might be thinking. One would be like, what are the trends right now in the DAO space? Like, where are we going? Where do we need to go? So it's almost like if you guys could guide builders for the next 6 to 12 months, which you also can, I guess, where would you tell them to go aside from what you've already told us? Like, what are the things we need in the DAO space? And then two might be just, what advice would you have for someone who is coming to the DAO space to start a DAO? They don't have a DAO consultant yet. Maybe they should hire you guys if you're available, or me. But what would your advice be to them, you know, as they begin this journey of starting a DAO? So two questions. You can address one or both, or anything else you want to share with the audience. Given we only have a few minutes left, now would be the time.
I would say,
go ahead.
Just go do it. Like, try it. Like, go try to launch a DAO. It's free. You know, try to launch a Yeeter campaign or something like that, or like that's how I would just try to like learn the technology and get into it and stuff. As far as like what's missing, a lot of stuff, right? Like, I'm excited about some of this agent meta that is like trying to make sense of some of the on-chain data and some of the stuff going on in DAOs and proposals, and spit that back to people in ways that helps them make decisions in the DAO. Because I think that there often is a lot going on in DAOs, and it's hard to tell what's going on, and people burn out, and you know, it's hard to participate in governance when you don't know what's going on. Maybe the AI agents can help with some of that.
Yeah, I love that. How about you, Travis?
I believe what's missing is purpose. A lot of organizations is purpose. A lot of organizations are coming together, and they don't have this guiding vision, this guiding values of why they're coming together. And that makes everything that you build on top of that difficult, because you don't have something to refer back to. You don't have a way to question the decisions or to make changes based on the things that you've learned, or how, you know, the winds may change. And so, you know, understanding that, you know, why are we coming together? Is it to, you know, brew a beer? Is it to build a protocol? And what is important to what we are doing, and what do we believe in? So planting that flag is extremely important, so you have something for people to react to. It's like a homie talked about, you know, when he was in college, they had the Badger Cheese Club, and it was pretty simple to understand what the Badger Cheese Club was doing. They're fucking eating cheese, right? They may make some cheese, who knows, right? It's for people that are into cheese, and the more simple that your vision is, the easier that it is to understand, the easier it is going to be to find people that are aligned with it, or to give some people something to react to that they don't want to participate in, and both of those are fine. And so, you know, in order to like understand this stuff, just DAO it. Like, it doesn't have to be this, you know, multi-year plan that you're trying to implement. You can go spin up a DAO now on Moloch V3 and experiment with the tools. Even if it's just yourself. What does writing a proposal look like? What does transferring tokens from the treasury to your wallet look like? And how does that work? And we're not going to get it right. So the more times that you experiment with it, the more times that you can get practice with these tools, the better that you're going to be, and the more confident that you're going to be with this technology. And it's not rocket science, but it's not like you have to go to the Secretary of State and file a bunch of paperwork and all of a sudden shit's official and, oh my God, is my legal structure correct? That's not necessary in the beginning. All you have to do is hit summon and be able to experiment with this. And more than likely, nobody's actually going to see it. So it's no big deal. But getting familiar with the tools, getting familiar with the technology will help you understand how it can support that larger purpose.
Awesome. I love that. It's the first thing I did a little over 3 years ago when I got into DAOs was launch DAOs, launch smart contracts using DAOHaus and a bunch of other things. And I love the advice about having a purpose from the beginning, because if you're going to have a relatively permissionless group of people where anyone can join and buy in, you want them to know what they're buying into so they can decide whether to buy in or not, even if it is permissioned, right? People need to know what is the commonality in this organization, in this group of people, that means someone should join, someone should invest, someone should contribute, whatever it is. And I think having that documented can be really, really valuable. So guys, this has been awesome. Before I conclude the show with a disclaimer and a couple other notes, would you please share with everyone, where can they find you or your projects on the web or on social media?
Yeah, our website is at farcastle.net. But in the spirit of practicing what we preach, we're trying to do as much as we can on Warpcast. So you can come to the Farcastle channel on Warpcast. I am Earth to Travis on Warpcast, so don't hesitate to at me, slide in the DMs, whatever. But I think that's the best place to find us.
Yeah. Also, I got a list of URLs. DAOHaus.club, Yeet.house, Speedball.DAOHaus.club. There's a ton of them. I also have two teeny projects. All this pitch, two little side projects. I live in an agricultural little valley where we grow the best peaches in the world in Western Colorado. And so I run a project called Peach Tycoon. Buy NFTs, you can trade those NFTs, sell them, and you can exchange them, and we'll send you a real box of peaches. We've done it for a couple of summers in a row. We're doing it again. So peachtycoon.com. And we're also releasing our first wine this winter. Going to taste it in a little bit, but forgottenfruit.xyz. All these have DAOs underneath them too. Again, all these projects we build kind of have this DAO tooling underneath, and they might not look like DAOs, but they are. So all on chain.
Interesting.
And please do reach out. Like Sam referred to, Adam, it's not how we want to use these tools, it's how you want to use these tools. And so really trying to understand, the users and help them, inspire them, understand what's possible, and to, set up the systems to support their values and their purpose. And both with just DAOs in general and how, we might use channels for DAOs moving forward in the future. We are legitimately interested in having as many conversations as we possibly can. So we're building what others need, not what we think.
That's awesome. And I'm excited about getting in on the peaches next year. For some reason, that's actually really the website. I was looking at the website too while you were speaking, and it's almost like you're playing Farmville. Yeah. Like you got to, if you want to water it or fertilize it, but then you get the peaches at the end. So that's
you can sell those peaches. We have a marketplace, or you can exchange them and get them and eat them.
really interesting. If anyone wants to find MyDAO or MIDAO, MyDAO.org, or MyDAO on Farcaster, on X, unfortunately, we're MyDAO DS for MyDAO Directory Services. I am the Thriller on Farcaster, or again, unfortunately, 0x Thriller on X. Thanks everyone so much for joining. Quick disclaimer, we're not even lawyers, so it's obviously not legal advice. It's not tax advice, not financial advice. But really happy to have everyone here with us. And as Travis said just a minute ago, to the audience, are you thinking about starting a DAO? Just DAO it. Thanks so much, guys.